as it helps us. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where people will gladly tell you what to think, how to act, what to feel, and worst of all, who you are. But let me tell you something powerful. If you don't prioritize your own growth, nobody else will. That's a truth most people discover the hard way. You can spend your entire life waiting for someone to notice your potential, to give you permission to rise, to open a door. But the moment you realize that the door has always been inside of you, that's the moment your life begins to shift. You are your greatest investment. Not your car, not your clothes, not your followers, not your job, you. Your mind, your skills, your character, your ability to think, to decide, and to act. Those are the assets that determine your future. You've got to understand there is no return without investment. People say they want better, but they're unwilling to become better. They say they want to change their life, but won't change their thoughts. Wanting something doesn't create it. Investing in it does. When you treat your life like it's worth investing in, life starts to yield returns that others can't even comprehend. Most people work harder on their jobs than they do on themselves. They show up early, stay late, sacrifice sleep. But when it comes to building their mindset, strengthening their spirit, learning new skills, expanding their vision, they hesitate. They procrastinate. They make excuses. But you were not built to run on excuses. You were built to run on purpose. And purpose must be fueled by investment. Let me break this down. Think about how the financial world works. If you invest in an asset, whether that's real estate, stocks, or a business, you expect it to appreciate, to grow, to produce something over time. And you wouldn't expect growth without consistently pouring into it, nurturing it, adjusting to its needs. So why don't we treat ourselves the same way? You are the most valuable asset you will ever own. You are your own stock, your own brand, your own enterprise. What are you doing to make your value appreciate? What are you doing daily to ensure your mindset isn't stagnant, your heart isn't bitter, your vision isn't small? Some people are trying to live a millionaire life with a minimum wage mindset. They think they'll wake up successful one day without ever reading, learning, failing, growing, or sacrificing. That's not how life works. Your current level of success is a reflection of the investments you've made in yourself up to this point, as it helps us. If you want more, you've got to become more. If you want a different outcome, you've got to produce a different input. That input is your discipline, your decisions, your focus, your priorities. Let me give you a clear example. Every successful person you admire, I don't care who it is, has one thing in common: they decided to outgrow who they used to be. That didn't happen by accident. It happened by intention. They thought differently. They spoke differently, as it helps us. They treated their time differently. They said no to average so they could say yes to greatness. You've got to do the same. And that starts with thinking about yourself as your primary project. When you wake up in the morning, your first thought shouldn't be about checking someone else's feed or replying to someone else's drama. Your first thought should be, how am I becoming a better version of myself today? What books am I reading? What thoughts am I challenging? What skills am I sharpening? What beliefs am I upgrading? What mindset am I reinforcing? Because the truth is, every day, you're either growing or declining. There is no such thing as neutral. You're either becoming more valuable or less relevant. And in a world that's constantly changing, your ability to think critically, act boldly, and lead confidently is your competitive advantage. That doesn't come from luck. That comes from work. Not work for a paycheck. Work on you. This is not about vanity or ego. This is about stewardship. You are responsible for what you've been given. You are responsible for your gifts, your talents, your mind, your soul. If you don't manage you well, nothing else in your life will ever work right. You can't build a business that's stronger than your mindset. You can't lead a family more powerfully than you lead yourself. Abscess. You can't impact the world if you're ignoring the person in the mirror. So ask yourself every day, am I investing in the version of me that I say I want to become? Or am I simply maintaining the version I've settled for? When you become the kind of person who invests deeply in who you are, you stop depending on motivation. You start operating from conviction. Motivation fades, but discipline remains. And discipline is born when you decide that your growth is not optional. It's essential. Every powerful life you see started with that decision to think about themselves enough to grow. Your value is not up for negotiation. That's not just a motivational quote. It's a foundational truth you need to anchor deep in your spirit. Because the moment you start treating your worth like it's subject to opinion, you start living beneath your design. People will always have something to say. They will critique what they don't understand, judge what they've never done, and try to discount what they didn't build. But just because someone doesn't see your value doesn't mean it disappeared. Diamonds don't stop being diamonds when they're buried in dirt. They just need to be discovered. And sometimes the person who needs to discover your value is you. See, when you truly understand your value, you stop begging for validation. You stop trying to prove yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop shrinking to make others feel comfortable, and you stop waiting for applause before you act. Value isn't about popularity. It's about purpose. And purpose isn't voted on. It's assigned. The God who created you didn't put your worth up for debate. He established it. You were made in his image, formed with intentionality, and called to something greater than likes, comments, or consensus. One of the biggest traps people fall into is this idea that their worth is tied to their performance, their relationships, or their past. But let me make it plain, your value is intrinsic. It was baked into your DNA. It's not determined by how many degrees you have. It helps us. How many dollars are in your account, or how many followers recognize your name. Your value is not fragile. It's not seasonal. It's not situational. It is permanent, and it is powerful. The question is, do you believe it? When you don't believe in your own value, you start to tolerate what you were meant to transform. You let people stay in your life who drain you because you think that's the best you can do. You take jobs that underpay and underuse you because you doubt your potential. You keep your voice quiet in rooms you were called to lead because you're scared someone will say you don't belong. But the problem isn't them. The problem is your internal valuation. If you saw yourself as God sees you, your whole life would shift, because once you know your worth, you stop participating in things that diminish it. That means you've got to stop negotiating your identity. Stop letting opinions shape your core. Someone's criticism is not your identity. Someone's rejection is not your prophecy. You weren't designed to be a slave to feedback. The world is full of people who will never understand your purpose because they didn't receive your vision. But you did. You were the one given the dream, the assignment, the burden. So why are you giving people a vote in a future they're not even willing to build? Think about a luxury brand. Rolex, Ferrari, Louis Vuitton. They don't run sales. They don't explain their prices. They don't market to everyone. Why? Because they know their value. They understand that the right people will recognize quality and the wrong people aren't their audience. You need to treat your life the same way. Stop advertising yourself like clearance merchandise. Stop discounting your greatness just to fit into rooms that don't deserve your presence. You are not here to be accessible to everyone. You are here to be effective with the right ones. When you know your value, it changes your posture. You walk differently. You speak with more clarity. You make decisions with more confidence. Not arrogance, confidence. And there's a big difference. Arrogance is loud insecurity. Confidence is quiet conviction. And conviction comes from alignment with truth. The truth is, you were created for something significant. Not everyone will see it. And not everyone is supposed to. But that doesn't give you permission to forget it. Every time you allow someone to define you, you hand them the power to limit you. That's dangerous because most people aren't qualified to speak on your life. They're still trying to figure out their own. So don't let someone else's uncertainty become your blueprint. Don't let their doubt become your ceiling. Don't let their inability to love themselves dictate how you treat you. This is why it's critical to get rooted in something higher than opinion. Because the higher the calling, the louder the distractions. And you will be tempted to compromise for approval, tempted to chase validation from people who can't even validate themselves, tempted to water down your purpose just to be liked. But remember, being liked is cheap. Being respected is priceless. And respect begins with how you treat you. The world mirrors what you model. If you carry yourself like you matter, as it helps us, the people start to respond to you that way. If you hold the line on your boundaries, people learn how to interact with you. But if you don't know your value, you'll keep living life on a clearance rack, hoping someone will finally pick you. Let's get one thing clear. Boundaries are not about being mean, selfish, or closed off. Boundaries are about stewardship. They are about knowing what you've been given, what you've been called to, and what you need to protect in order to fulfill that calling. Too many people think saying, "Why us?" all the time makes them kind or spiritual. But there's nothing spiritual about being drained, burnt out, or bitter. There's nothing holy about being constantly interrupted, constantly manipulated, or constantly available. Even Jesus took time to withdraw from the crowd. Even he said no. So what makes you think you're supposed to be accessible 247? When you don't have boundaries, you give people access to parts of you they haven't earned, don't respect, and can't handle. You start living reactively instead of intentionally. You're always putting out fires instead of building something that lasts. And then you wonder why you feel exhausted, overlooked, unappreciated. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're unprotected. And protection is your responsibility. You can't expect other people to value what you don't guard. A boundary is not a wall. It's a gate. It doesn't keep everyone out. It lets the right people in and keeps the wrong things from controlling your life, helps us. It's a filter that lets you preserve your focus, protect your peace, and pursue your purpose without constant distraction. Helps us. When you know where you're going, you don't let just anybody ride with you. Not because you're better than them, but because your mission matters more than your mood. You don't owe everyone access to your time, your mind, or your energy. You only owe them love and respect. And you can give those things without sacrificing yourself. There's this toxic belief in our culture that in order to be good, you have to say yes. Yes to every opportunity. Yes to every request. Yes to every need. But you're not God, you're not omnipresent, you're not limitless, you're human. And humans need rest. Humans need margin. Humans need time to think, to create, to grow. If you're constantly reacting to everything and everyone, you leave no room for revelation. You leave no space for strategy. You're so busy being busy, you never become productive. And don't confuse the two. Busy is doing a lot. Productive is doing what matters. The truth is, people will push you as far as you let them. If you allow them to guilt trip you into saying yes, they will. If you allow them to disrespect your time, they will. If you allow them to bring chaos into your space, they will. And you can't blame them for that. You train them. You trained them that your time was flexible. You trained them that your no doesn't really mean no. You trained them that you'll always be available, even at the cost of your peace. But the good news is you can retrain them. And you retrain them by changing how you show up. When you set a boundary, you teach people how to treat you. You're not just telling them what you don't allow, you're showing them what you value. I value my peace, so I don't argue about foolishness. I value my time, so I don't overextend myself. I value my mind, so I don't let negativity rent space in my head. I value my purpose, so I don't engage in distractions dressed up as obligations. That's not pride, that's clarity. And clarity leads to power. Sometimes we think we're kind of by saying yes when we really mean no. But false yeases bred resentment. They create relationships built on obligation instead of authenticity. You start to dread the people you were supposed to enjoy. You start to resent the commitments you were supposed to honor. And all of it could have been avoided with one honest sentencing: I'm not available for that. You don't owe an explanation. You don't have to apologize for choosing alignment over approval, as it helps us. Because at the end of the day, you're not responsible for how people feel about your boundary. You're responsible for living the life you were called to live. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with your calling, you're saying no to something that does. Every yes costs you something, and you need to start counting the cost, not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally. What does it cost you to constantly be the hero? What does it cost you to always be the fixer, the one who never stops? And who told you that was your role anyway? Because if your identity is built on how useful you are to others, then you've made yourself a tool, and people use tools. Not because they love them, but because they're available. Boundaries are not a luxury. They are a necessity. You can't grow, thrive, or create in an environment where everyone has access to your inner world. You've got to close the door sometimes. You've got to go silent sometimes. You've got to say no to protect your yes, because your yes is sacred. Your yes builds your future. Your yes shapes your destiny. You are the CEO of your life. That means you are not just a participant in your story. You are the decision maker, the strategist, the visionary, and the executor. Every choice you make, every thought you entertain, every person you allow into your space, every habit you practice, all of it is shaping your business, your life. Most people want the outcomes of leadership without the responsibility. They want the fruit without the labor. They want a powerful life, but keep living like spectators instead of operators. If your life was a company, what kind of shape would it be in? Would it be profitable? Would it be productive? Would it even have a mission statement? Or would it be full of clutter, confusion, and chaos? When you operate like a CEO, you begin to evaluate everything through the lens of vision. Is this conversation pushing me forward or pulling me off track? Is this habit helping me grow or keeping me stuck? Is this relationship a strategic alliance or a toxic liability? A CEO doesn't spend a day running around aimlessly reacting to everything that pops up. They have agendas. They have priorities. They delegate, eliminate, and optimize. They don't let distractions lead the way. Strategy leads the way. So why live your life any differently? So many people treat their lives like hobbies. They approach their goals with a maybe someday mindset. They take their potential and treat it like a side project instead of the main assignment. But what you don't take seriously will never produce serious results. If you want your life to reflect excellence, you have to lead it like it matters. You have to show up like your future is depending on it, because it is. The most successful people in any industry don't have more talent than everyone else. They just take their role more seriously. They act like the CEO of their destiny. Look at your habits. Would a successful CEO keep hitting the snooze button 10 times every morning? Would they spend 3 hours scrolling social media with no purpose? Would they spend time around people who drain their creativity, kill their ambition, and mock their dreams? Of course not. A CEO understands that everything and everyone has a cost. You either add value or you subtract it. You either contribute to the mission or you become a distraction to it. That applies to relationships, routines, and even your own thought life. Your thoughts are employees. Some of them are working overtime to build your future. Others are clocking in late, doing nothing, and talking trash behind your back. It's time to start firing thoughts that no longer serve your growth. Fire the thoughts that tell you're not enough. Fire the thoughts that keep you stuck in fear. Fire the thoughts that replay your failures over and over again like a highlight reel of regret. Hire new ones. Thoughts that believe in vision. Thoughts that make room for faith. Thoughts that reinforce your assignment instead of questioning your identity. You wouldn't keep an employee that's sabotaging your company. So don't keep a thought that's sabotaging your life. If you really understood the power of your position, you wouldn't waste time waiting on other people to approve of your next move. CEOs don't ask for permission to build. They create and lead. They don't let criticism stop them from implementing new strategies. They learn, they adjust, and they keep going. You can't lead your life if you're constantly distracted by every opinion, every rejection, or every delay. A CEO expects resistance. It's part of growth. And when you expect resistance, you stop being surprised by it and start being strengthened through it. Now think about your time. Time is your capital. How you spend it determines your return. If you're investing hours in activities that don't build your vision, that's money lost. That's opportunity wasted. That's leadership neglected. Every minute you mismanage is a moment you can't get back. As it helps us, that's not meant to scare you, it's meant to wake you up, because most people don't lose because of lack of talent. They lose because of lack of structure. They lack discipline, focus, intentionality. They keep giving CEO energy to part-time priorities. Start setting standards for how your life operates. Create systems that support your success. Build habits that make excellence normal. Structure your days like they matter. Guard your focus like it's gold, because it is. You can't run a world-class company with a lazy operating system. And you can't build a powerful life with a chaotic routine. When you treat your life like a business, you begin to see that excellence isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. It helps us. Being deliberate, making choices that align with vision, not with emotion. You're not waiting for motivation. You're running on mission. Thinking about yourself is not selfish. It's essential. We've been conditioned to believe that self-focus is arrogance. That looking after your own needs means you're ignoring others. But that's a lie rooted in false humility. Because the truth is, if you don't prioritize yourself, no one else will. People treat you how you treat you. If you constantly put yourself last, they'll believe that's where you belong. If you ignore your well-being, they'll assume it's not important. If you never advocate for your dreams, they'll never see them as valid. The world mirrors your internal belief system. So when you start showing up for yourself, the world starts responding differently. Most people spend their lives trying to earn value by doing more for others than they do for themselves. They think their worth is measured by how much they can give, serve, sacrifice, and tolerate. But the problem with always pouring out is that eventually you run empty. You become a shell of yourself, giving what you no longer have, saying yes when your soul is screaming no, smiling when everything inside is falling apart. That's not love. That's not purpose. That's self-abandonment dressed up as virtue, and it never leads to peace. You were not born to be a background character in your own life. You were created with power, with identity, with purpose, and that means you have a responsibility to honor what's inside of you. You can't keep putting yourself on the back burner, hoping that someone else will recognize your fire and bring you to the front. It doesn't work like that. As it helps us, you have to think about yourself because you are the only one who truly knows what you need, what you want, what you carry, and what you're capable of. If you don't think about yourself, you'll lose yourself. That's how people end up in lives they don't love, jobs they can't stand, relationships that drain them, and routines that destroy them. They stop checking in with themselves. They stop asking the hard questions. They stop dreaming. They stop planning. They get caught in the cycle of doing what's expected instead of what's aligned. But when you begin to think about yourself, not from a place of ego, but from a place of stewardship, you start to reclaim your power. You begin to design a life that actually reflects your values, your desires, your potential. It's not about being selfish. It's about being aware of how your choices affect your peace, aware of how your energy is being spent, aware of who you are becoming in the process. Thinking about yourself allows you to make decisions from a place of clarity instead of confusion. It helps you set standards that protect your purpose. It reminds you that your life is not just about survival. It's about creation. You're not here to just exist. You're here to thrive, to grow, to lead, to influence. And none of that happens accidentally. Every major shift in your life will begin with a decision to think differently, to think higher, to think more intentionally. You can't elevate your life while maintaining a low view of yourself. You can't build something powerful while constantly doubting your right to build it. That's why thinking about yourself isn't just smart. It's strategic. Because when your inner world is aligned, your outer world begins to reflect it. Your relationships change. Your habits change. Your language changes. Your environment starts to match your mindset. The people who succeed in life are not the ones with the easiest path. They are the ones who were clear about who they were and what they were building as it helps us. They didn't wait for permission to believe in themselves. They didn't wait for applause to take the next step. They thought about their goals, their boundaries, their mission, and they protected those things like they mattered, because they do. You matter. Your peace matters. Your vision matters. And the moment you stop apologizing for thinking about yourself is the moment you start moving in power. This isn't about living in isolation. It's about living in alignment. Because when you are fully yourself, you actually become more valuable to others. When you're whole, you love better. When you're focused, you lead better. When you're grounded, you give more generously, not out of pressure, but out of overflow. You become a better friend, partner, parent, leader, not because you've neglected yourself, but because you've nurtured yourself. And that's the difference between depletion and purpose. Everything starts with you. Your thoughts, your choices, your habits, your energy, the way you speak to yourself, the standards you hold yourself to, the grace you extend to yourself in failure, the belief you carry when no one else is clapping. You are the foundation of your future. If you ignore that foundation, everything you build will be shaky. But if you strengthen it, invest in it, protect it, everything you build will rise strong.